No secret that Israel and the US cooperate on several security questions, including the fight against COVID-19. I24 News was allowed to attend a video conference briefing between an Israeli police officer and the NYPD representative in Israel. For the first time, he has agreed to be filmed.
The latest is that police units are still mobilized in the different areas. In the north, specifically for that festival, so we have 2,500 units altogether that are around the different areas. They're going to make sure that there won't be any public, came very much under control very quickly. So I think, it's step by step. We're taking things slowly but surely as the different areas are opening up again.
Crime is still ongoing, so we're busy. Our officers are answering radio runs. Our officers are properly equipped with COVID-19 equipment.
According to the Israeli police spokesman, these briefings between security agencies take place weekly. Currently, they focus on the pandemic management by the Israeli police officers. The American representative is pleased with the cooperation.
We do see how Israeli National Police is dealing with the current situation in Israel, and we are learning from it. We're trying to understand what works for the Israeli National Police.
Unlike
Good evening. I'm George Turner, Chief of the Atlanta Police Department. I'm honored to bring greetings to the Israeli Police Commissioner Danino upon his retirement after more than 3 decades of military and police service, with the last 4 years as commissioner. I visited Israel in 2008 with the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange and was impressed with several practices I saw during my visit, so much so that I implemented several here in Atlanta. Our Video Integration Center in downtown Atlanta, with more than 5,000 public and private sector cameras, is modeled after the Command and Control Center I saw in the old city of Jerusalem. Our video center has served us very well in having eyes in many parts of our city. The Atlanta Police Leadership Institute was modeled after the Israeli Police Leadership Development Center. We have an active exchange program with Israeli police to help train and prepare the future cadre of the police leaders. 2 of our 5 majors who went to Israel last year have already been promoted to deputy chiefs. It is important to know that Commissioner Danino has been a strong promoter of international law enforcement exchange, professional development, enhancements of best practices, as well as commitment to excellence. His turnaround strategy plan has put the office and service to the community as the center of the Israeli police. We appreciate the strong relationship we have with the Israeli police and look forward to further enhancing our ties in the future. I thank Commissioner Danino for his service, for his strong support of international law enforcement professionalism and brotherhood. On the occasion of his retirement, I wish him all the very best with his ventures, and I look forward to our continued partnership with the Israeli police.
This morning, Chrissy, you've learned that Atlanta has a long relationship with training officers in Israel.
This is true. Police chiefs, sheriffs, even the former GBI director has helped train officers in Israel on best practices in community policing and safety. It's through a group called GILI, the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, based out of Georgia State University and run by a man who called Israel home. This delegation of Metro Atlanta law enforcement just took a trip to Israel this summer, making the images they're seeing now all the more heartbreaking.
This is a new level of brutality that's human savagery that is simply unacceptable.
Dr. Robert Friedman could only talk by phone this weekend, but he couldn't keep the emotion from his voice. His beautiful home country under attack. 30 years ago, he started GILI, the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, an international program that helps train law enforcement around the world, often taking trips to Israel to train on the ground, sometimes hosting Israeli officers here in Atlanta to learn about community policing and homeland security.
We have had all of the chiefs of the Atlanta police participated in it. Many of the chiefs from around the state participated in it.
The delegation just traveled to Israel in June. Thompson Police Chief Courtney Gale was on that trip.
We would have briefings every morning when we would go on excursions. Their hospitality was incredible. They brought us into their homes. They really opened doors to show us what their day-to-day life was.
To see the country now, only 4 months later, is hard to swallow.
Tel Aviv is comparable to Atlanta. So when people are trying to imagine what this is like, think about something catastrophic like this happening in Atlanta to one of our police stations.
Do you think they're drawing on some of the lessons learned during this training as they, meet this crisis right now?
Yes.
Chief Gale says the attack touches home for her. She says 3 of the police chiefs they worked with were killed, including Lieutenant Colonel J.R. Davidoff, chief of the Rahat Police, who hosted them this summer.
Everyone was very impressed with him as a very promising officer that had a tremendous career.
Pain that is still raw as the situation in Israel continues to develop.
The attack lasted for about 3 hours. It actually was not the first time that Zionist agitators had appeared to harass students. During the week that students had their encampment, virtually every night, Zionists would appear and they would blast music to keep students awake during the night, employing torture tactics that we see a lot being used on our own political prisoners. And it came to a head when Zionists arrived in a much more organized force, in a much greater numbers, and they were demonstrating a clear intent to harm the students in the encampment, a clear, more than disregard for human life, but an active desire to harm students using bear mace, tear gas, pepper spray, launching fireworks into the camp in an effort to set the tents on fire. We saw students responding to these outside agitators with a tremendous amount of courage, with a tremendous amount of perseverance. They demonstrated steadfastness. They were at this point all out for Gaza. That's all I have to say. These students were prepared to defend the encampment because their goal is and has always been to apply pressure to the university. And we saw that the university itself, realizing this and realizing the threat that the encampment poses to their genocidal interests, allowed this Zionist assault to continue unabated for 3 hours. We saw campus security stand by. We saw UC Police Department, the campus police. They did absolutely nothing. Whereas in a heartbeat, they would respond to protesters, peaceful protesters. We saw actual fascists at UCLA, and the university decided that these fascists were more in line with their genocidal interests. And so students had to hold it together for Gaza. Students had to hold it together despite the university's repression and despite these aggressors.
As we broadcast this morning, Los Angeles police and riot gear are dismantling a pro-Palestinian encampment on UCLA's campus after hundreds of police used flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, and tear gas in a face-off with protesters who chanted, "We're not leaving, you don't scare us." The police raid at UCLA came a day after pro-Israel counter-protesters attacked the encampment with fireworks, metal rods, and tear gas for hours late Tuesday night and into early Wednesday morning. At least 15 people were injured. This is how UCLA's student newspaper, the Daily Bruin, described the violence instigated by counter-protesters in an editorial. Quote, "It began with ear-piercing screams of wailing babies loudly emitting from speakers, counter-protesters tearing down the barricades, laser pointers flashing into the encampment, people in masks waving strobe lights, tear gas, pepper spray, violent beatings. Fireworks sparked at the border of the encampment, raining down on tents and the individuals inside," the Daily Bruin wrote. The editorial noted Los Angeles police did not arrive until slightly after 1 a.m. Meanwhile, around 3:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, 4 UCLA student journalists were attacked by the pro-Israel counter-protesters on campus. One of the journalists was treated for injuries at the hospital and has since been released. There were no arrests after Tuesday night's attack. Wednesday's classes were canceled. The Daily Bruin's editorial ended with a question, quote, "Will someone have to die on our campus tonight for you to intervene, Gene Block? The blood would be on your hands."